All right. It is Sunday, the weekend of October 8th, and welcome to the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. Let's go ahead and look at the price action for the indexes this week. Bit of a choppy week. Some bigger moves on Friday, as always. Starting with the NQ price, why don't you go ahead and get us started this week?
Yeah, on the NQ here, with the daily chart, we have a pretty good move up and hold. We saw it print here. We wanted to see a little bit higher, but we could still see that on this movement here. On the weekly, it's a not as quite a positive outlook, but there's still some resistance here that we'll need to break through and close above in order to see higher local highs. Higher than here. Of course, this is a higher local high, but we want to see it come up and make a higher high. And until then, we're still kind of looking downward, unfortunately. But we expect to see some resistance here at 15,200. But this was a nice daily close up above here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that we definitely need to see a little bit more upward momentum if this thing is gonna hold up and firm up back to the upside here. It does look like a nice, kind of a breakout on the daily here after this consolidation. You have all these equal lows, so those look really nice from a bull perspective. And seeing all that accumulation with a breakout, you would think, okay, textbook lower, breaking out higher. The problem is, I think on the weekly we still have this, this double. Well, I don't want to call that a double top, but really this lower high rather, look up here. So until we kind of break above these areas pretty far up here at 15,400-ish for the fib, or this just straight up resistance level at 15,550-ish, we really need this to make another weekly higher high to kind of confirm the reversal of this trend, which is quite a bit of ways up here. I know that when we started just kind of reviewing before we started up here, we both kind of agreed that we really need to see these candles close above 15,000 and not go back below. Otherwise, it does start to look like it's going to break down again. Could see a lot of movement between that range, so we'll have to see what happens this week. But right now, it does look like this is kind of the first thing that we want to see if we are going to move higher. So I'm pretty much agreeing with you here, but we'll have to see for confirmation first.
Yeah, we want to see up above here so that the shorts that live from here and this area get stopped out, and that's why we want to see confirmation above 15.7, 15.8, and that'll signal for higher highs.
Yeah, that'll give us our higher high, and then we can look for an entry point on a pullback to move toward all-time high. That's kind of what we'd be looking for at that point. Let's go ahead and move on to ES. What do you think of that?
Kind of a similar movement, but it didn't make that higher local high. So we did see it come down to this bottom of the range here during the week, and you'll notice that there's still more support down below, which honestly it's looking like it's gonna make a lower low here, even further than it is here. We want to see this close up above 44 here before we expect to see higher up like 45. So I don't have much confidence in this movement, even though we do see it higher than these lows here. I want to see much higher before we have a hold and go. On the weekly, it really looks like it's going to keep coming down to me, and test this consolidation here. But that is some very strong consolidation that we'd expect to see hold. So very normal, but definitely looks like it's going to come down a little bit further. What do you say?
Yeah, I think the NQ chart makes the picture over there is a little more confusing than the ES chart, right? So if I look at the daily, like really what happened this week is we actually made a new lower low locally on this move. So like you were saying, we really have to break back above 4,400 to actually kind of break that look. Whereas on the NQ, we almost have the start of, maybe forming a new local higher high, potentially looking like maybe a reversal or what the start of a reversal would look like. Got a ways to go before we see anything like that on the S&P here. And like you said, on the weekly, it doesn't look as good. I think a really key thing to kind of point out here on the weekly, I'm seeing it just now, so the absolute low of this pullback here that then produced this leg that produced essentially the lower high there. This is actually 2 closes below that. So that's kind of something that we look for. We like to see 2 closes above or below certain areas to kind of confirm a certain area of price action. So we could see this come back up and try to grab some more liquidity and then move back down for that leg. Like you're saying, I completely agree with you. I think we are probably going to see more downside on the S&P as well as the NASDAQ. But that's much clearer here on the ES. So we'll have to see.
Yep.
All right, let's go ahead and look at the small caps RTY. We'd kind of talked about probably after seeing this breakdown, we'd probably end up seeing the low of the range here that we've seen for a while, and that's exactly what we got. Pretty huge downside move early last week, and then kind of seeing this actually move to the support level and get bought up. So that's pretty normal, just the standard downtrend. Lower high. I'm sorry. Oh no, that's right. Lower high, lower low, so it could come back all the way up to here probably, and still look good for another lower low. I mean, this is just now we're just back in the range, so we'll have to see until we break through this support level, make a new low, or move back above this level again. We're just in this range, so not really a place where I'd really want to be taking any trades. We're just back in this consolidation area. Need to see a convincing move in either direction before we can do anything with this. Not a whole lot to say on that on the daily. Weekly looks pretty similar, right? Just more downside. I would not be surprised, looking at the weekly now, we've had a lot of testing here at 1730-ish. I could see it coming back down to the 1600s again fairly easily, potentially making an even lower low. So we'll have to see what happens there. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it could move between these green lines at 1823 and 1732, kind of sideways for a little bit here. Or if it were, if it did make a lower low, that's when we'd want to see it break up and produce higher highs. So it really just depends on what they decide to do here with the Russell. But even going a little bit lower doesn't make it look that bad. On the weekly, you can see here that there's still some support right about there. That it's basically 1700 exactly, and we could see that low produced and then see a higher high locally. But I think it's going to range for a little bit here.
Yeah, well, it's kind of just back where it's been doing that in the past, so until we see a confirmation on either side, I don't think there's any reason to make any calls here. And certainly wouldn't open any trades where it is. It's literally smack dab in the middle of that area, so you'd be eating the risk from both sides of that range. Definitely have to wait for something to present itself. Let's go ahead and look at gold. Gold had a pretty interesting last couple of weeks where it's just been dumping. Same thing happened this week, but we actually caught a little bit of a bid here. We kind of had this liquidity pool marked for quite a while, and it found some support here. No surprise kind of where it found support, right? We've seen it kind of consolidate here in the past before the leg up. So because this was the last area that held to produce the next high on the larger time frame legs, that's no surprise that this was an area of interest, and that's exactly what we've seen. So kind of catching a bid here. It definitely needs to kind of break back above this 1875 area to even look like it has a chance to move back up. Kind of similar to RTY almost in a way, where we kind of needed to break out in either direction again before we kind of confirm what's going to happen here, I wouldn't really take any trades unless I was probably would wait for it to come back toward this 1820-ish area just to take a local trade, something like that. But you know, with it kind of where it is now, 1847, we need to kind of see if it's going to actually move up or move lower before we make any decisions here. Just kind of talking about the long-term look of gold now. I mean, you know, we really wanted to see one of these higher levels hold to kind of take out the old high. You could see this come back quite a bit more, maybe down here somewhere at 1750-ish, right? There's a lot of interest there. You know, and that would still look good on the monthly time frame, but on the weekly, you know, we're starting to get to this point. Is the last area to hold before we're going to make another weekly lower low, so then we'd be all the way down here at 1700, something like that, 1750, 1700. So we'll just have to see with gold. I mean, if I had to, you know, gun to my head, kind of predict where it's going, I actually don't believe the gold's going to hold up here. I think that we could see this go to the downside. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, very similar. It even, you know, on the 4 hour, it's failing to produce a higher local high. So I think that's telling us exactly what we want to, or not want to see, but that's the signal that it's not going to hold up here. If this were going to hold, we'd see this low and a much more confident movement up. But we don't see that just yet. So I see lower.
No, that's an interesting. I didn't notice that on the 4 hour, but you're right. So I think a lot of people might think of this as like a liquidity grab, especially the way the candle looks there. But it didn't, you know, reject off that level and move significantly higher on volume. So, you know, we have all these wicks up here, and it's even getting sold off when it touches us again. So yeah, it does look weak. You want to see a really strong move if you're going to look for a reversal on a candle move like that. So yeah, gold not looking too good. Kind of the story of the week. But let's go ahead and look at the Dow. What are your thoughts on the Dow?
Well, on the daily, we do see this lower low and then it coming back up and printing. It did close up above, but let's see here on the 4 hour, and it actually is pretty convincing on the 4 hour. There's a new local high. So we could actually see a little bit of a bounce here from 33,000 when it comes back down. But I still, same thing. I don't really see the strength in this move just yet. It did hold the low here previously, but it just doesn't look like it's got that ability to keep going, unfortunately.
Until it breaks out on the daily with a new higher high, I don't see it moving back to the upside. And personally, on the 4 hour, I feel like this area, and I'll actually draw this and talk about this for a second. This area here is kind of the key area that needs to break. And the reason I think that is we see a lot of wicks into that area. This is, you know, okay, we're definitely moving down, and then it gets bought up. So, you know, this is essentially a liquidity grab if you're, you know, a bull, and you see all these wicks getting bought up, but we failed to kind of move back above there. And the other thing about those wicks is they all kind of encapsulate the same area. So the fact that we haven't actually been able to gain above that, and we kind of tag the bottom of all these wicks here when we tried to move up and sold off again anyway, looks pretty ugly. I think that we need to see, I mean, if this is a range, that's fine. This kind of what would now be resistance level is sufficient enough. We need to break above there and close higher, probably than these candles up here. So if we're gonna move higher, we need to see 34,000 probably gained, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on the short term. Long term, let's go ahead and make this chart look better again. I mean, on the weekly, you see these wicks coming down into these support levels and getting bought up. Still closing red though, so until we see a reversal, yeah, long term, still looks like we could be making new lows, so we'll have to see. Let's go ahead and take a look at our friend oil. We've been, you know, little humble brag, we've been pretty good on oil with our calls the last couple of months, so Looks like a big sell-off this week, no surprise, right? U.S. said, hey, we're done buying oil, we filled up our reserves, and therefore there's a huge loss of demand, and we see the price of oil crash. But it came back right to our level, or rather our liquidity range, where we've seen a ton of interaction over a very long period of time, about 9 months, where we can tell this is a very important range that price is very interested in because of all the wicking into and getting bought up, or wicking into and getting sold off from either direction. We're back there again, and guess what happens right on the 4-hour? We have this nice little consolidation of price action there. I think that this is a pretty key area to hold, and I'm not saying that if this goes lower that it won't hold up, but I think we could see a good amount of accumulation in this price range. You can see I've kind of drawn we've drawn a potential trade idea. This is a nice longer term trade, maybe 6 months to a year. Could definitely see, we've been talking about 117, getting something of that move, potentially taking a nice long here, or down at 80, moving on up towards 117. I think if we see this break below 76, then that starts to look like potentially making a new lower low on this leg, and that would invalidate that idea. So we'll have to see what's going on going forward. Do you have any extra thoughts on that?
I think on oil here, the daily and the weekly are lining up really nice for this movement. We can see that this upper range here on the daily was lost, but on the weekly, nothing has been lost yet. We're just coming down to normal support levels that have been gained, and I really see this continuing up. I've been saying that every week though, so.
Well, I think we're confident on this trade idea. I think that it's very likely to see higher, and I'll harp on this again. This liquidity box is so strong that I feel like this just makes total sense that we'd see a bounce from there. And even if it broke lower, we're talking about wicks with that idea, but look at all these closes right on this line right here at $80. I mean, that's a ton of macro time support right there. So it just makes sense, especially after consolidating for 9 months below these levels, essentially, that there's a ton of volume behind this move. I mean, unless something disastrous happened politically, which I suppose is not out of the ordinary, there's not going to be enough volatility on oil to the downside, I think, to drive it below those levels. I think that the technicals are screaming that this is going higher. Let's go ahead and go over the dollar. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have anything to add?
Well, just real quickly, nothing about this move was surprising. It created a higher high here, higher than, let's see, price hasn't been this high in just over a year. So that's why we see this sell-off here, right at this level that produced the shorts that are right here. So there's nothing unexpected about this downward motion. So
yeah. I mean, it's normal and to be expected pullback, right? I mean, you can't have you can, especially on oil, I suppose, if the circumstances are right, a giant run up without any pullback. But even on the big runs, you see them pull back. I mean, if we look back over here, you have this huge green candle, and then what happens? I mean, it opens so much higher, and then look how far down it goes, right? So that's like a 20-point drop. I mean, this is how price moves. It doesn't just go up in a straight line forever. So these are necessary and to be expected moves for the counter trend moves to be able to get the fuel to move in the same direction. So nothing unexpected about this. I actually really like that this was quick and violent. Like, I think we've talked about in the past how sudden sharp moves are actually more likely to hold up into key levels than the drift of death, right, where you just have weeks long price consolidating and no one's sure what's happening. It's a lot of changing of hands of shares, essentially. So yeah, I like this. I like right where it is. I like the price action, everything about it. Love it. Let's go ahead and move on to the dollar. Well, I think last week we had kind of marked off this potential little daily level. I know we're on the weekly now, but I just wanted to pull that out. So it makes sense that we stopped here, and all this is, again, the same concept, right? Normal and to be expected pullbacks to continue the same move. Really looking on the 4-hour here and honing it in. This looks like a textbook, pullback into an interesting key level, right, on the 4-hour to potentially bounce off. I think that we could see this come all the way down if it really wanted to. You know, maybe 104.6, 104.2s, and even 103.6 again, since that was like the major swing level we identified last time, and it would still, on a long-term chart, look perfect for higher. I still think 109.6 is pretty inevitable. I'm not going to say exactly when that will happen, no timeline from me, but it just looks so good. This looks perfect from higher, especially after breaking out above this key level here, right? That's been the level for a long time. So that's why I think 105.8, kind of around where we are now, is kind of the perfect area to hold. You know, I don't think this is going too much further down. I think we're going to see higher in a hurry. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it could hold here and get higher above this level here. What really tells me that is that none of the daily levels have been lost yet. So if we did proceed lower, it would lose the daily, but that wouldn't mean that the weekly is threatened at all, because you can see this big level here at 104, like you said, especially with this wick here from previously. It looks good for higher. This is a reasonable place to take a trade.
Yeah, I like it. I'm actually trading this using Euro USD. Trading that's on my Forex account. I'm in this trade, so I think this is pretty likely to play out, and with good risk to reward near current levels, so it's great. And one last thing, actually, while you were looking at the weekly, I noticed there. You know, again, we harp on this all the time, right? 2 closes above, right? So we got our, you know, maybe you'd say, oh, this is a bearish candlestick, but price still closed above this level, right? So who cares about what the candle looks like? This is confirmation of the move that's going higher. Could see that pull back to cool off a little bit, especially on the, I mean, if you want to talk about, you know, a huge move, potentially overbought, you know, on the weekly. How long has it been? We got our first red candle in like 10 to 12 weeks or so. I'm not going to count that right now, but yeah, I mean, it's been a huge move. It's another reason why this candle is not overly bearish, right? We needed to cool off, and that's kind of what we got. And it's not even that cooling off of a candle, so I think we're just going to shoot straight to 109.6 in the near future.
I do too.
Cool. Enough harping on that. Let's go ahead and look at the KRE. What do you think about that?
We produced a new low, which could give us the fuel we need to keep going up. We're you know, on the 4 hour here, we see this level kind of being gained, closing above and then being bought up, and that's, you know, pretty good signal for higher, but we do want to see it come up above right in that area, to be able to, and you know what, I'm gonna put a box there.
Oh yeah, yes, that is exactly what I see as well.
So you know,
you can see all those wicks from
here,
the top above it too.
So we want to see price come up above this, and then we could see higher highs on the higher time frames, on the daily and the weekly. But look at, I wasn't even looking at this, and you can tell how big of a deal this zone is, that produced this leg up. So price will need to gain this, and then it'll be able to go higher, and that'll invalidate the shorts that are taking place on this. And produce a higher high. We did see that it held this low, this little like doji here on the daily. So that's, you know, very expected normal price movement here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that this kind of is the last. I think we talked about this last week too, where I thought that this was the last area that has to hold before we're gonna lose and produce a lower low. Right now, this is sort of an equal low kind of look. And I really like your box. I mean, just looking, if I drag this over, you know, we see all those things here. Look at that right there, perfectly respected. And then when we gapped up to produce this move, the top of that box is the low of support there. So, you know, this is perfect. I think you're spot on with this level, and unless we see this gained, we're definitely going lower to make a new lower low. So again, we've been saying this a lot recently. This was a great level here for a long, but until we break above there, we're going to just have to see what price does on the regional banks to see if we can move back higher. I think I was talking about this before we started. I really think we need to break above 45 to continue this bull case on the banks, just because even though this is actually a nice candle look, right? We actually closed above 41 here, which we have marked as a level of interest there. So that's a nice look, but until we close above 45, it's not going to look like we're going to make our next move toward a higher high. So that's going to be a big deal. So look for 45. We need to see price close above there on the daily and the weekly to go forward and make that bull case happen. But I don't really have any other comments on the KRE. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again for tuning into the Trader Hub Weekly Market Review. If you like this kind of content, sub to the Hub and consider joining our Trader Hub Discord community server. You can find it using our link in the description. We'll see you next week.